Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining us today in the online community update. The CVRD team, that's your directors and staff, have made it a priority to share regular, ongoing updates with residents of the services and initiatives that the RD is working on in the electoral area. We did our first online update last November, which was well received by residents, and the community requested more. They requested the updates to continue. The pandemic has limited our in-person engagements, and bringing these information sessions online seemed like a great approach. We enjoyed the opportunity to talk with you and are looking forward to meeting with you 2 more times this year. We're now at the end of February, 3 months since our last update, and there's a lot to share about some significant projects and progress updates on the critical work that we're doing to keep our services functioning smoothly. I'll hand it over to the directors now for their individual updates, but want to add that we welcome your participation. We have several staff on the call today who can help with answering any questions that you might have. So once again, thank you for sharing your lunch hour with us. And with that, Director Hamir, I'm happy to pass the mic over to you.
Thanks very much, James. And sound is okay? Thumbs up?
Yes.
Great. Thanks. And thank you everyone else who've called in from across the Comox Valley. Really great to see you over Zoom. I know this isn't as great as meeting in person, but I'm so glad that you're taking the time to come and chat with us. So I'm going to talk to you about 3 items: curbside, recycling and garbage collection, and then a Seal Bay Park update, and then sewer planning. So I'm going to dive into the curbside recycling garbage update. I know many of you have been emailing me and trying to find out what's going on. This is probably one of the topics that I've gotten the most amount of feedback on, and I'm really glad to see this because, you know, I think as the directors and staff, we don't take the creation of new services lightly. It's something that we want to see broad support from our electorate and make sure that we are actually doing something that our community really wants to see. So we did get over 3,000 participants filled in surveys. So 3,000 of you took the time to let us know that this was an issue that was important to you. We initially sent out the survey saying that we would be looking at approximately 13 neighborhoods for curbside collection. And from the feedback that we got, staff have sort of advised us that it looks like 11 of those neighborhoods have overwhelming support for the creation of curbside pickup. So we're going to be moving on with reaching out to you in those neighborhoods in April and trying to formalize the service with the idea that, you know, the cost of the service would be something between $150 to $250 per year per household. We're trying to keep this as affordable as possible. We heard from many of you that using local contractors was a really important thing. So we're keeping that in mind. But before we do create the new service, just know that there is a formal assent process that's going to happen so that the taxation approval is there. So I'm really glad to see that there is so much interest in curbside recycling and garbage pickup, because overall, the reason that I'm so supportive of this issue is because we need to see less garbage going into our landfill. By increasing the amount of recyclables that are diverted away from the landfill, it increases the lifespan of that landfill. We use way fewer tax dollars. I mean, landfills, I know it sounds really simple, putting garbage in a hole in the ground. They're a very expensive piece of infrastructure to maintain. So the longer the life cycle is, the less tax dollars that go into that. Plus, you know, much better for the environment for us to divert things that have other ways of using them, like our recyclables. I know it's been a challenge with the closure of the depot at Country Market and, you know, this year with Canuck. So really looking forward to seeing a curbside pickup so that we can reduce our waiting times. So I think all of us are probably, for those of you who go to the recycling depot at Puntledge Road, there's a lineup, I know, with COVID and everything. So I really want to thank you for continuing on to recycle, and look forward to providing the service to cut down on all of that time for you. Do keep in mind we'll be reaching out. And before that, if you want to look specifically at what's happening on the Comox Valley's Connect CVRD.ca website, we have a special page specifically for this curbside pickup. It's the rural roadside. So if you go to connectcvrd.ca/rural roadside, that's where the information is kept. Now for Area B direct specifically, I think with COVID, I know I was using Seal Bay Park way more than normal. I'm a regular there, but it was so nice to be able to take my kids for walks there when we were all getting a bit squirrely inside. And so I see many more of you using our parks, which is fantastic to see. We have a few more improvements that are being made, particularly in the parking lot at Bates Road. That parking lot is used very heavily, and we know we need to expand to allow for more cars, but we don't want to really cut into the park. So staff are looking at ways of expansion to allow for more parking, but minimizing any kind of clearing that will happen. So look forward to seeing things like that. Our staff are going to be coming up with a design, finalizing that design this spring. So you'll be hearing more about that. And then lastly, this is particularly for Area B residents in the Lazo area. You may have heard about the Comox Valley Sewer Services liquid waste management plan and the need for us to change the conveyance of sewage of septic into the Curtis Road treatment plant to try and offset the Wilmar Bluffs conveyance. Plus, we're seeing some other areas where we may have some infrastructure that's way past its lifetime. So what we are looking at is some tunneling that will be happening through Lazo and through Comox as well. And for those of you who do live in the Lazo area, I know the issue of your wells has been brought up. So staff will be reaching out for you. And if you haven't been contacted, you may not be in the direct route of the drilling, but if you know someone who is, we are hosting an event on March 4th at 4:30 p.m. to talk about the tunneling and the conveyance that will be going through that neighborhood. So please do reach out either to me, to staff, or you can email directly communications@comoxvalleyrd.ca. So that's it for me. But definitely, if you've got questions at the end, we'll be all sticking around. I'm going to hand it over now to Director Grieve. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Arzina. Arzina touched on something called the AP, or an alternative approval process. A lot of people don't realize that regional districts are structured quite differently than municipalities, in that every single service or function that we offer is in its own standalone silo. It has its own taxation bylaw, it has its own legal, its own administration, and we cannot transfer funds from one to the other. So when it comes to a situation, say like the Merville Fire Hall, where we had to actually increase the area, we have to go to an alternative approval process. Last year, especially with COVID, it was decided that maybe we should go for a one big alternative approval process for the different issues that are coming up. The AAP is a way of gauging the support in a community, but unlike say a referendum, you don't actually have to go and vote. You write in. There's a certain length of time that is advertised in the local media where you can put your comments in, and if we get less than 10% of people opposed to a certain project, then we do have to go to a referendum to gauge the community support. We got a few coming up this year. I think the first one is probably going to be in July, and there's a couple of items of note for the electoral area C. and actually A and B as well when we talk about the Community Hall Service Establishment Bylaw. And as of now, our community halls are supported through a grant and aid. They submit a grant and aid request every year, and we go over the grant and aid, and it's a piecemeal thing. So they have to keep applying year after year. Well, community halls, as you well know, are the heart and soul of rural communities. So we are looking to establish a community hall service that will provide funding on an annual, probably a 5-year basis, where the halls can have secure funding and do their programs. It's not a big increase, because, as I say, the grant and aid process is how they're getting their money now. So what they're looking for, electoral area sent, AAP, for a few of the halls in areas A, B, and C, and this will probably be coming forward in July. So we do definitely encourage people to support their community halls and support this service. It'll bring a lot of comfort to the community halls and allow them to continue far into the future. The one in Area C I was alluding to is the Saratoga Mosquito Management Service. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But if you need more information, you just go on to www.comoxvalley.ca/AAP, and they'll give you all the information on the upcoming AAPs. Now, specifically for Area C, there's a couple of items that's going to be coming up on our first alternate approval process. Saratoga Mosquito Management. People that live in Saratoga Miracle Beach have experienced an infestation of a nasty little mosquito. I think it's Dias dorsalis. Some people call it the saltwater mosquito. And these things are especially voracious and make it very difficult for people to enjoy their homes and their backyards. We've done quite extensive testing in the area for larvae, and with an outfit called Duca Environmental over the last couple of years, and we pretty well zeroed in on where the trouble spots are. So the concept is to bring forward a small taxation of about maybe $35 or so for the residents, and it will be approved in a certain catchment area. So only the people that are actually affected in the infested area would get to pay into it. And the idea is to use BTI, which is a larvicide that's approved as an organic larvicide, been used over 30 years. And it's very effective on mosquitoes and not other aquatic creatures. So it zeroes right in on the problem. We do have a open house coming up for anybody in Saratoga Miracle Beach. Actually, I should mention March the 10th, 6:30 to 8 o'clock. More information on the web. It'll be a virtual open house. We'll just discuss how we're going to proceed with this. As I say, the mosquito problem is very difficult to control because they're very hardy beasts, and they do live in brackish water. One of the things that's really disturbing is the fact that the eggs can stay dormant for 10 to 20 years. So it's going to be a bit of a long haul to try to get on top of the situation. Yeah, actually, so the cost is approximately $32,000 a year for the residents. So as I say, anywhere from $35 to $45 per household. More information coming, but I think it's definitely a welcome in that area. I've been getting lots and lots of emails over the years, and we have, contrary to some popular belief, we've been on this issue now for at least 3 years. So we're looking to go to the province for a integrated pest management license. And when we get that, then we can go ahead and start the treatment. Hopefully in the new year. I don't think it's going to happen this year because we have to get the provincial approvals. The other one I always want to talk about, of course, is the Merville Hall update. Great news that the AAP for the Merville Hall borrowing bylaw has been approved. with very strong support in the community. We're looking for construction of a hall starting this spring. It's going to be located on the Mars Avian Rescue property, leased from them. And it will be on Williams Beach Road, so just off 19A. We'd like to thank Mars and the group there for working so constructively with the CVRD in bringing this about. Hopefully we'll be up and running with the hall and the apparatus by the fall. And for anybody out there interested in becoming a firefighter, I think we have 17 training right now with the Oyster River Fire Department. So get in touch with Fire Chief Green up there, and you can sign up and become a firefighter. And certainly it is going to be a great boon, not only to the property owners, which it, by rights, it should have some effect on your fire insurance, but also the fact that you can count on a first responder showing up at your doorstep in a timely fashion should you have a medical emergency, which out here is very important, because otherwise we're half hour away. That's about it for Area C, I guess. A lot of good stuff going on, but like all things in local government, everything takes time. So do look out for those alternate approval processes, and please give us the support to move ahead. And now I'm going to turn it over to Daniel Arbor.
Thank you, Dr. Grieve, and good to see everyone today. Yeah, so I'll cover a couple more things happening in regards to the rural areas. One thing that's a little bit new is we now have a website where people can go for engagement opportunities and updates. It's connectcvrd.ca and /electoral areas. And so it's a bit of a hub where we can put information up around things specific to the rural areas. As you know, the three of us are members of the brother board. So sometimes when you get information, it's about the whole Comox Valley, but we created a little space just for the rural areas. So you can go there and share comments, ask questions, and generate input. For example, right now the CVRD is starting work on active transportation planning. So that's all, in the rural areas, the roads are covered by the Ministry of Transportation, but there's lots of collaboration to improve things, and sometimes even with private property owners and others. So right now we're doing an effort to try to identify priority areas where residents would like to see improvement for cycling, walking, rolling, etc. So you can go to the website and look for that engagement piece. At the same time, if you go through there, you can get funneled towards the wonderful world of our budget. It's interesting. It feels like we're doing the budget 3 times in 1 year. Obviously, we did it last year, and then when COVID hit, we did it again, going line by line to try to understand the impact of COVID on our services. So we did that in May and June, and here we are again, just in the midst of budgeting right now. So if you have input or you have questions, don't hesitate. All of our information is quite transparent. Every service is broken out so you can see who's paying what and where. And that's all part of the Rethink Comox Valley plan, which we launched as part of COVID. You have until about March 11th to submit your comments or questions regarding the budget. And so we're in the home stretch in times of finalizing, but to be honest, we always like good feedback and ideas, and the board is quite amenable to changing things if we get good rationales out there. On the regional basis, we have advisory planning committees in the rural areas, and those are awesome. As you know, like the municipalities have councils and mayors, and here we, for each area, we feel lonesome sometimes, but those APCs actually review a lot of the development permits or variances that come forward, and sometimes we also bring big topics. For example, last year we brought the Stoughton Falls to that committee. So if you know anyone interested in joining both Area A and Area B, so myself and Director Hamir have some spots for people who may be interested in joining that. They meet about once a month, and right now it's via Zoom, obviously. In terms of Area A specifically, a couple of short updates. There's many updates in Area A, but we picked out the big ones that I think, especially in the Bain Sound portion. So the UBIT conversion for Union Bay is going really well. I've been really happy with how things have unfolded since the vote in November. We have a committee that basically looks after the transition. The Union Bay Improvement District staff is working closely with our staff. James Warren, who's here, is the lead on the CVRD side. If you want more information on that, don't hesitate to reach out. You can also find it on the website. And transition is looking for July 1st still as the passover date from the UBID to CVRD. In regard, another topic that seems to have been going on for years and years and years is the Royston and Union Bay sewer. We know there's many that have interest in that. It's got a long history, 2 or 3 referendums over the years. We did have a breakthrough this year. I think we reported on that in the fall, in that we can now connect to the municipal systems, which could save significant amounts. So there's opportunities being reviewed right now, and where right now our staff is doing a lot of analysis. We're actually waiting on a major grant application that we put in. So if that comes through, things could ramp up pretty quickly. Otherwise, we'll keep plugging away at it. I think in the long term, everyone agrees that it's probably the ultimate solution as our communities grow and the level of density that we have and the number of failed septics, etc. I think everybody understands it's something that is bound to happen at some day. So we're continuing work on that. And then there's lots of little projects. I mean, we reported on the COVID grants last year, but one I really look forward to in 2021 is our community program staff. Doug DeMarzo is here, and we're going to install a new playground in Fanny Bay this summer, and at the community hall to replace the old one. And we're always open to partnership with nonprofits and to support good ideas out there. So never hesitate to come forward with your ideas and requests for support from the CVRD. I have found personally that our staff is very flexible, very responsive, and they do a great job of looking for ways to make things work for rural communities, in my experience. So with that, I'll pass it back to Colleen and welcome any questions or feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, directors, for that presentation. Obviously a lot of ground to cover. I'm just going to share my screen again so that I can put up a few of the websites that we talked about through that presentation. So I'm just going to leave this up for a moment in case one of those topics was of particular interest to you, so you can find it pretty easily. Obviously, the first part of most of them is the same. Tried to make it really quick for you to be able to jump to the information that you are looking for. So now is the time that we would be happy to answer any questions that you have. As I said, if you have a question and you'd like to share it, open up the chat box. And you can just type it in there and share it to everyone. If you don't want to share it with everyone, please feel free to send it directly to me. And you can do that by dropping down the everyone selection box with a little arrow and choosing my name, and then hit it that way. And I can relay it to the directors without it being posted for the group. And so because we are just waiting for a couple of people to share questions, that means that I get to ask the first question. And I'm going to take that chance because I love this opportunity. So, maybe we can go in the same order that we had, we went through the presentation. So I'll be starting with you, Director Grave. My question for you is, aside from the items that have already been talked about, are there any things in particular that you're looking forward to seeing in the community this year?
Well, I'm always in favor of the parks and greenways. I think it's a huge benefit for the physical and mental health of the entire Comox Valley. It must be remembered that the parks in the rural areas are strictly paid for out of the parks budget that from the 3 electoral area directors. So when those city people come out and use our parks, they don't give us a penny. No, just kidding. But it is really important to note that we have been moving steadily in increasing our parks and in developing our parks and our greenways. And I'm very hopeful that we can keep that going forward. Although I would be remiss if I didn't remind people that dogs have to be on leash. We've had some problems with some of the agricultural community where dogs are off leash on the trails and chasing cattle and whatever, and there's been some bad outcomes to that. So in order to keep the farmers on side as well, and the same holds true, although it's not our jurisdiction, on all the foreshores and beaches. I know there's a lot of issues up in Saratoga Miracle Beach with dogs running loose, and people think it's an off-leash beach. There is no such thing. The fines are federal fines because you're dealing with wildlife and birds on the beach. So please, if you're taking your dog, please keep them on a leash. That's all we ask. Thank you.
Great. Director Hamir, would you have something you want to add for your area?
You know, not apart from what I said, actually, the rural reside, you know, the rural curbside collection is something that I know has been talked about for many years. I mean, with the failure of the last referendum, I was really sad to see that it didn't pass in the previous board. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that happen and move forward. I think the way that we have moved forward, looking at these different communities and neighborhoods makes a lot of sense. Because I saw in the chat, someone was asking Linda was asking if I could confirm if we're going ahead with all 13. And I'm just going to double check with staff, but I'm pretty sure we're going to be going forward with the 11 for sure, because we got really good, strong support from those 11. The two communities that I think were primarily closer to the landfill itself showed less support. So I think it's in those neighborhoods where people can easily drive to the landfill themselves, that they didn't feel that, you know, they would benefit from a service like this with taxation. So Sarah, I see you nodding. It sounds like I got that answer right. So for now, we're going to go with 11. But that's not to say that if neighborhoods decide later that they want to be included, that they can't. So if a petition starts in a neighborhood and has the signatures of the majority, that can also be used as a way of joining a service that they aren't included in already. But I'm pretty sure all of the 13 or the 11 communities, the ones in Area B are included. I think it was mostly Area C that they weren't. Yeah.
Director Arbor, we've had a couple of questions, but I want you to have the opportunity to highlight any other things you're looking forward to this year before we move into a couple of questions that have come in the chat.
Yeah, thanks. I think my focus is a lot around how we recover and restart from COVID. Those are things that, yes, affect rural areas. In a way, we've got it pretty good. We have gardens and things to go to, but they affect everybody. And that the CVRD, it's a huge piece of work. For the last couple of years, I've been chair of the Recreation Commission for the Comox Valley, and the question of how we reopen facilities and also get people back into active living and get kids back into activities and all that stuff, right? We've seen a lot of volunteers sitting on sidelines for months. So I really want the CVRD to do a great job to support the communities in as we attempt to relaunch. So all those community partnerships, I think, are really important, especially this year as we're in that kind of twilight zone right now while we wait for vaccination. And so, yeah, that'd be my main one. And in terms of specific projects for the rural areas, you know, I have so much respect for everything the CVRD has gone through and continues to go through in regards to Soda Falls in Area C and Director Greaves' area. And I'm hoping that, you know, we'll keep working towards some kind of resolution around the opportunity there. So that'd be my two main ones for this year. Thanks, Colleen.
Great. Thank you, guys. So we have a couple of questions that have come in. Director Hamir, you already covered the first one, so thank you so much. The next one is speaking to a development project that's proposed in the Oyster Bay area. Wondering whether or not CVRD will be collaborating with those developers or with that proposed project, specifically around the sewage treatment effluent outfall related to that. Director Grieve, I'm going to send that to you because I think you're close. You'll be closest to the area. Do you have any insight about that piece?
There's a couple of developments going on up there in the Oyster Bay area. One is the redevelopment of the Saratoga Speedway, and their plan to increase it into more of a family-friendly park and put playgrounds. They talked about a water park, but we don't have that's another issue, whether we can go and have a water park up on 19A, but and a campground up there as well. The other one, there is some property that's been long-standing, used to be called Miracle Beach Estates, and it has recently sold. The original owner that tried to develop it years ago or bought it from the person. It was second, third hand here. But that's all preliminary stuff. There's absolutely nothing to report yet. It's all pretty abstract right now. It's conceptual, but certainly the planning department is working with both those developers to try to make sure that we get the maximum community benefit.
You're muted, Colleen.
Sorry, I see Alana turned on her video. I just wondered if she had something else that she wanted to add there.
No, that's great. Director Revere, you covered that. Thank you.
Great. Hopefully that covered your question, Leslie. If you had any kind of follow-up, feel free to drop it in the chat box to the side. We had another question kind of speaking to the topic in your presentation, Director Arbour, about the APC. Somebody looking for you to maybe expand a little bit about kind of what exactly the APC is and what kind of qualifications are required for people who might be interested in participating.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, so the APC serve as, again, a very important role, I think, in rural areas in providing advice to the directors and the board around usually land use issues that come forward. So in terms of qualification, I think that the main one is interest and care for the community. That's very broad. But then we have all kinds of different people that participate. Some are more expert in the field of land use, or and then some are just general interest and they just want to see their communities develop in a good way. And each area has their own APC, and we also have a special one for agriculture topics. So yeah, I think it's a good group. In my communities, we try to have somebody from, representation from each of the communities. We have representatives from Royston, Union Bay, Fanny Bay. We all share the same official community plan, and the three areas, and we also share the regional growth strategy with the rest of the municipalities. So when you're in the APC, you get to encounter all kinds of different files that come forward. And for me as a director, I mean, probably staff may disagree with that, but I look at them as a bit of our council for the rural areas. They're not elected, they're appointed by directors, but because we have to cover broad areas, Dr. Grieve as Mount Washington to Saratoga to all that, having the APC have the ear on the ground and understand what could be important in the communities is very valuable to provide input. So they are supported by staff, meet about once a month. That's about the commitment. And sometimes it's very light agenda. And sometimes we're dealing, again, like with big controversial issues. So So it changes from month to month what comes before them. We ask for at least a 1-year commitment for people that sign on, but in the case of Area A, the people that have been there are having a great time, and they've been there, I think, for some of them for a number of years. So yeah, so that's the background. Hopefully that answers Linda's question.
That's great. At the end of this, I'm going to post a slide too that has the director's contact information as well. And so that is a quick way for you to be able to connect with Director Hamir, Director Arbor, if you're interested in learning a bit more about that APC membership and what the process will be moving forward. I had one question just directly to me about where to find the recordings of this video afterwards. So on the connectcvrd.ca/electoral areas website, it's on the right hand side in the column. You might have to scroll down just a little bit, but there's just one so far because we had the one in November, but you can see the link there to be able to review our last session. So then another question, I'm going to send this one your way, Director Hamir, is about whether or not there are any long-term plans to burn garbage as part of the solid waste management plan here.
Thanks. And thanks for that question. I am the co-chair of the Comox Strathcona Waste Management Board. So for those of you who don't know, we share our decision-making around solid waste, which is your garbage, with Strathcona, with the regional district just north of us. And that's a historical use. So in terms of burning garbage, there are no long-term plans for us to burn garbage. We do have a select committee that is looking at alternative technologies around what we can do with our garbage to, in some ways, either create products that have other uses. So this standing committee, which was called SWAT, it's on waste alternative technologies, has been looking at a technology that is currently being trialed in Chester, Nova Scotia. And it's a technology that's actually not burning, it's using pyrolysis, which is an anaerobic process of turning the plastics into a synthetic diesel and then pyrolyzing any organics, so turning it into a biochar. The metals and the glass would all have been pulled out before any of this. It's a very untested, I would say, technology. Our staff have been monitoring it for a number of years to see what is happening in Chester, and I can't say that we've had really good data coming from there because, again, they're trying to figure it out. So for now, we haven't come across any kind of technology that seems to fit our needs here in Comox Strathcona for our waste. So for now, we are concentrating on in developing our organics facility in Campbell River, where the organics from Comox, Cumberland, and Courtney will be taken to compost there and then be able to be used. People in the community can pick that up. And then by actually taking garbage out of, especially if it's got a use like recyclables and returnables, really diverting as much as we can out of the landfill instead of going towards those technologies that, are either burning or pyrolysis or whatever. So hope that answered that question.
Yes, thank you, Director Hamir. Because I still have you and because of your role in the Solid Waste Commission, I thought maybe I would pass you another one in the same area. So it's specifically about why the decision was made to close the recycling areas, for example, the one at Canex, if it's, if the end goal is to encourage recycling.
Yeah, I know it was a really, really difficult decision, and it impacts all of us, especially in Area B, because that's where the two depots really were. So I can give you a couple of reasons why we decided to close both of them. The first is, both of those depots were unmanned depots where people were supposed to, on good faith, divert their recyclables. But what we were seeing was a lot of garbage dumping. So people would just lose, I mean, you could probably see the questions or the photos, you know, sofas were being left and all kinds of garbage. It was costing us, and I'm going to look at Mark, I remember a $30,000 just for the country market site, if I recall. It was costing taxpayers a lot of money to clean up those depots. On top of that, what was also happening was that, you know, people, you and I, were diligently separating out our, you know, recyclables. And then people were dropping things like lawn clippings or, you know, landscape clippings and contaminating the entire bin. And so when that happened, the entire bin turned to garbage. So both garbage outside left, you know, with people dumping, and then contamination of those bins. You know, again, we were trying to have a low cost method for people as a depot, and it just was not working. So what we've decided is, you know, to close those. We have a facility in Puntledge. And I know right now things are a little slower there. It takes time to get through the lineup to take your recyclables there, but it's actually a spot where you can actually take way more than you could have ever at any of those other like Canucks or country markets. So I don't know if like we recycle, if we get any kind of white styrofoam, your electronics, all of that goes to the Puntledge Road site. So we do wait, you know, a few weeks and kind of collect a lot of recyclables and then go in one day rather than our often drop-offs at country markets. So it's a different system. We are still very much committed to recycling. And so I'm hoping, and this is again why I really want to see this rural recycling. So please do vote on it and make sure that your neighbors understand that this is going to be really important. I think once it's in place, we will really see a huge increase in recycling because I think that has been one of the issues. People just are not, for those of you and I who are committed to recycling, we take our stuff diligently, many don't. So I'm really hoping that, you know, with the rural pickup, we start to see way more diversion happening. So that's all beneficial to everyone.
That's great. Thank you for that overview. So the next question that has come in I'm going to send this to you, Director Arbor. I know it's a topic that's of interest for sure for you. It's about kind of the process for installing electrical vehicle chargers. And you know, does the CVRD have any involvement in that process, or is there a way for the CVRD to have involvement in that process? I guess for picking locations, probably specifically.
Yeah, thanks. Good question. And definitely something we are working on. I think it's a year ago that Director Amir showed up with her new Nissan Leaf at the CVRD, and I've had mine for a few years. By 2040, we're going to see a huge shift, and we're starting to see the big lift off right now around EVs and weaning off the petroleum-based transportation. So it is happening. Local government has a huge role to play. I think one of our very first decisions in 2018, that's when I think some of us newly elected were like, oh, we can actually have an impact. We asked that charging station be added to the new CVRD building, and it was done. Then we participated in a grant application with other regional districts through the regional district of Nanaimo for like EV infrastructure on the Mid-Island. We were successful in that grant. Currently, staff is working with the other districts and the consultant to finalize the location of some level 2 stations. I personally feel there is a need for fast chargers. I don't believe the Comox Valley is very advanced in terms of fast chargers. We still don't seem to have hooked Tesla into coming to the valley. But we're expecting a staff report in the next months, both around the deployment of some infrastructure. So you might see some of the sports center, the aquatic center, the exhibition grounds, and then I think there's going to be more needs in the future, and identifying where's the smart place to put those Again, I have a suspicion that we will be led to realize that we need some fast chargers, but definitely a role of local government. The province is driving the boat around the objectives, around the incentives, but I think we need to step up as local government and really be proactive. Realizing, again, like sometimes realizing some people still don't quite understand the technology, and 90% of the charging will happen at homes, but to have that convenience for those coming from elsewhere, I think is important. So we will be looking at that.
Great. Thank you, Director Arbour. That added a lot to that conversation, so that's great. Chris, I do see your comment just further on the garbage burning piece. That's really useful information. It's good for people to, sounds like a really interesting example. If you have any other questions, I'll make sure that obviously the project team receives that feedback. But if you have any other questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat. And with that, I think we've come to the end of our question list for those that are in there. So I'm gonna just we have kind of 5 more minutes here that we had set aside. So I'm gonna just take that moment to put up the contact information I said I committed to sharing earlier, so that you guys can all see it and maybe grab the email or phone number for the person you're interested in getting in touch with. And if you have any kind of final questions that you want to pop into that chat, now is the time. We could cover another 1 or 2, I'm sure, if there's anything else to cover. It doesn't have to be about our topics, obviously, as you saw. If you have something else that's important in your community right now, I'm sure the feedback is useful, obviously, for the directors to think about. Okay, well, it's staying cool. It's staying quiet over there. I'm going to take that down again and remind you all that we will be sharing this video on the Connect CVRD website. We'll have it up there in the next day or 2 so that you can check back in on any of the information that's been shared today. If you have any other questions, I know the directors and the staff are happy to answer them if you want to follow up. Afterwards. But with that, I would rather take 5 minutes less of your time than 5 minutes too much of your time. So I will say thank you to everyone for participating and joining today and raising your questions and hearing from us. We look forward to talking to you again soon, and all the best for the rest of your day.